story that I really wanted to shine a light on that hasn't gotten much, if any, attention from the mainstream media is the nationwide prison strike that started on August 21st. Now, if you care about human rights, then you should care about everyone in society, including prisoners. And to those of us who don't know anyone who served time, the conditions are surprisingly atrocious. Normal Americans probably have no idea about this, but they are striking nationwide and they're demanding a certain set of reforms. And among those include a repeal of the Prison Litigation Reform Act. They want voting rights for all prisoners, an end to racist gang enhancement laws, an end to death by incarceration, and additionally, they want rehabilitation services for all prisoners, among other things. So, for specific reasons as to why these reforms in particular are necessary, we go to Raven Rakia of The Nation, who explains, the Prison Litigation Reform Act, a law passed under President Bill Clinton in 1996, places barriers and restrictions on prisoners trying to file a federal lawsuit, including requiring prisoners to go through all administrative grievance processes within their prison before filing a case, not waiving court fees, limiting litigation costs that can be paid to the prisoner's attorney after a successful lawsuit, and restricting court cases that allege only emotional or mental harm. The result is a lack of access to the courts for prisoners when their constitutional rights are violated. A group called JLS, Jailhouse Lawyers Speak, is calling for the law to be rescinded. Their second demand reads as follows: an immediate end to prison slavery. All persons imprisoned in any place of detention under United States jurisdiction must be paid the prevailing wage in their state or territory for their labor. This has been a theme in work strikes over the past 5 years and speaks to a JLS slogan, abolish the 13th, referencing the 13th Amendment of the Constitution. Another demand, ending death by incarceration, targets lengthy prison sentences. Death by incarceration is any exorbitant amount of time that a person is given behind bars, assuming that they'll die behind bars based on the length of that sentence, Sawari explained, who is a spokesperson for the strikes. Life without parole is one example of death by incarceration, but it can also include sentences like 50 years behind bars. In 2017, over 200,000 people were serving life sentences or virtual life sentences, 50 years or more, according to the Sentencing Project. 50,000 of those people were serving life without the possibility of parole. A week before the strike was announced, Lee Correctional Institution in South Carolina made national headlines when a prison riot left 7 people dead. Raymond Scott, Eddie Gaskins, Cornelius McClary, Corey Scott, DeMonte Rivera, Joshua Jenkins, and Michael Milledge, all of them prisoners. The Department of Corrections blamed the riot on contraband, saying that opposing gang members were fighting over territory, money, and prohibited cell phones. The solution, the DOC asserted, was to block all cell phone signals in the prison system, but prisoners painted a more complicated picture, saying that the overcrowding has made prison conditions unbearable and guards waiting hours to intervene resulted in the high body count. While the DOC is trying to blame cell phones for the violence, it's those same phones that allow prisoners to organize, speak to the outside world and the media, and keep in touch with family amid exorbitant prison phone fees. South Carolina prisoners and members of Jailhouse Lawyers Speak decided to announce the national prison strike in response to this deadly riot. Prisons can't function without prisoners doing the work that needs to be done. Prisoners are the ones that work in the kitchen, that do the cleaning. They manage so many different aspects of the prison, Sarari told The Appeal. I was actually shocked when I was educated about the prison conditions in the United States a couple of years ago. And when you compare our unusually cruel prison conditions to the likes of Scandinavia, you'll see that we are just punishing prisoners for no good reason. I mean, not paying them, or basically paying them pennies to do labor, that is modern day slavery, and it's completely unacceptable. Now, a lot of people will be quick to say, these are just prisoners, they're the lowest of what society has to offer. But there's a phrase that I'm going to butcher. It says something along the lines of, if you don't look out for the lowest on the totem pole in society, that really says a lot about how you feel about human rights. I completely fucked up that slogan, hopefully people will know what I'm talking about and can include it in the comment section. But for the most part, the idea is that if you care about human rights, you can't pick and choose, where they apply. You have to look out for everyone. And yes, that includes prisoners and felons. And they should be allowed to vote. In other countries, in Europe, there are politicians that campaign in prisons because prisoners have the right to vote. So we go above and beyond to treat prisoners as cruel as possible. And it's just unnecessary. These are human beings who, in many cases, are serving lots of time. They've been removed from society. Whatever crime they've committed, they're no longer doing harm. So why not take a couple of steps to make sure that their lives aren't completely awful in prison? Why not do that? I can't think of an argument that's cogent that would convince me of otherwise. I just can't. If you truly care about all members of society, you've got to care about the prison strike. Raise attention about this. Share information about modern day slavery that still persists, unbeknownst to a lot of Americans. Share information about the prison strike. By the time you see this video, it may be over. I believe it's only lasting for 19 days, but it's just important that we know about these conditions. And by and large, the goal is to elevate this issue, put it on Americans' minds and let people know what's happening in prison, because a lot of us just don't know. So this is important, and I wanted to talk about this cause because I haven't heard the mainstream media covering this. And I think that this is a really important story, and we saw the same thing. There was a prison strike that occurred in 2015 or 2016, and it got almost no coverage, when that's unacceptable. This is important. The point of doing a protest is to get attention and, raise awareness about a particular cause. But if the media is not going to pay attention, then that whole protest was for nothing. And some of them are going on hunger strikes. They're refusing to work, and they're putting themselves in jeopardy and making them more vulnerable by doing these strikes. So the least we can do is at least listen to them and hear them out and educate ourselves about the conditions in prisons in America.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.